Good afternoon. Thank you for tuning into the Isak Clemens Show. I'm your host, Mr. Clemens. Today is Wednesday, May 6th, 2026. This is episode number 21. If you'd like to contact the show, you may do so by emailing me at theisacclemensshow@gmail.com. It's the same spelling as the podcast itself. Please give the show a follow on the Rumble app and click on the notification button so that you don't miss a show. Today I'm going to be offering my commentary, thoughts, and opinions on the April 27th regular Board of County Commissioners meeting. I think the saying used to be the greatest show on earth was the Ringling Brothers Circus. I would respectfully disagree with that. I think it's actually the Teton County, Idaho Board of County Commissioners meeting. If you're into true crime and drama TV shows, this might be your cup of tea. So this was a regular commissioners meeting, standard formatting on the agenda. Opened up with open mic. One of the regulars was there, Galen Hellier, and you're never going to guess what she was talking about. That's right, the condition of the county roads. There should be like a support group, maybe like a therapy group where everyone can gather around, talk about what automobile repairs they had to endure that week or what hardships they had to endure in exchange for living in one of the most beautiful corners of the world. I think some people need a hobby other than fretting over the conditions of the road. I can't imagine showing up week after week after week to the county commissioner meetings and lodging the same complaint over and over and over again. I think, if you show up 56 times talking about the same thing, by the 55th time, the people that are in the positions to fix or listen to your cries for help, I think you start to lose your effectiveness, but that's just my opinion. She brought it was a bit of a show and tell. She brought some photos with her from showing the damage to the road, and they're building a subdivision down the road, and it's the Northern Lights subdivision, and everything's squared away. The contractors have agreements in place to fix the road and bring it up to county road standards while it's when the project's complete. But of course, there's this interceding time where the road's going to get beat to hell from equipment coming in and out, and that's just the way it goes, right? If rarely is there a construction project that doesn't impact the neighbors immediately surrounding that, whether it's on a highway that you traverse daily or could be a little side street that's closed. I mean, that's just comes with the territory. And as members of polite society, sometimes you just have to endure the inconvenience while these things are underway. At some point, the home that all of us are living in, there was probably some construction associated with it, and the neighbors probably didn't like the noise or the backup alarms of the trucks or the dust or the nail guns or the air compressors or the construction site banter. But, tough shit. That's the way it goes, right? Construction sites are construction sites, and, unless you're being purposely out of line, causing a problem for the neighbors, that's, just the way. There's only so much you can do, right? You can't put the whole construction site in a bubble. Then we got on to Mr. Jeff White spoke at open mic. He thanked the county commissioners for hosting the weed clinic they had a few weeks ago. That was very informative. I attended that myself, and some of it was over my head. But if I learned anything from it, it's that treating weeds on your property, you have a couple of choices: a shovel, Roundup, or hire a professional. Once you get beyond Roundup that you buy at Ace Hardware, it gets very advanced with, if you're going to do it the right way, that is, with application rate, what kind of chemical you're using. These products are very expensive. They're sensitive to the time of year they're being applied, etc. So, not for the average schmo to be toying around with. I thought it was interesting. I like listening to these the comments and some of the. I thought it was a snide remark. Mr. White somehow managed to spin this cool clinic that the county put on for free about noxious weeds into somehow it made the gymnastics backflip leap to, well, did you know that the Trump administration is shutting down noxious weed mitigation on federal property? And it's like, of course, why wouldn't Trump do that? Hey, if that's what makes you feel good is to go to a Teton County, Idaho Board of County Commissioners meeting and make a dig at the Trump administration. That the joke, quite honestly, probably went over the heads of the commissioners, but such is life. You do you. Just my opinion is, there's a bit of familiarity here in small town USA, and I think if you're going to approach the dais, where the clerk and the county administrator and the three commissioners sit for this particular meeting, I think it's okay to have a modicum of respect. And before you go, say, "May I bring this to you?" You see people that go up there like they're slapping an FU letter on the boss's desk or something, or a termination letter, and they go up there with Exhibit A, B, and C photos. And I've seen people go up there with their laptops. Like the commissioners are even paying attention to what the people are like showing them a slideshow presentation on a laptop in the middle of the meeting. And I think it's in poor taste to go up there and start handing out your information. There is a way to submit things for public record, and you can do that in email so that it's memorialized in the documents. And to be fair to the commissioners, it gives them more than 3 seconds of notice at 9 o'clock in the morning when they're rubbing the eye boogies and getting their first cup of coffee, and they have you shoving, Polaroid photos and, stacks and reams of paper with studies and, God knows what. So if you're going to go there and use your time to speak, that's great. And if you have some kind of exhibit to share with them, I think it's best to submit that ahead of time so that they actually have an opportunity to look at it, and maybe everyone's time will be used the most effectively. Let's see. Just flipping through here, my notes, lots of notes on this meeting, so get ready for that. I just, going back to this comment about that Ms. Hellier made about the roads, sometimes I wonder the gripes that people have at the county commissioner meetings, which, you could submit these gripes in email, or, sometimes I think the spoken word face-to-face is more effective. Sometimes it's easier to get the point across you're trying to make rather than try and put it in words. But sometimes, if you're upset that there's construction going on down the road from you, I wonder if people ever go down and talk to the foreman on the job site, or foreperson, I should say, and see if you can hash out an agreement, or maybe get a better understanding of what's going on before you just run to the county commissioners and tattletale as if there's nothing else going on in Teton County other than the quarter-mile stretch of road that most directly impacts your life and 3 other people that live up there. But maybe that'd be a good thing as a society, is to maybe get back to going and knocking on your neighbor's door and saying, "Hey, I have a problem with this. Is there a way we can work this out?" So then, also, I think I mentioned this. Yeah, these developers, they have agreements. So, if they don't hold up the end of the deal, the county does have a mechanism to sort of go back and prod them to keep up their end of the deal. Yours truly spoke about the RAD contract that's looming. So I talked about this on the last podcast, and I raised my concerns about RAD not having what I believe to be industry standard equipment. That's the 40-yard dumpsters. And then if they're not going to have 40-yard dumpsters, and you only have 30-yard dumpsters as the biggest container in your fleet, well, they should be available. If you're going to be a sole source vendor for something and essentially have a monopoly or this exclusive franchise contract with the county that we all have to play ball with, you have to have the equipment available, right? Otherwise, what's the solution? If you want to get a construction dumpster and they say, "Oh, we only have 10-yard dumpsters," and you have 40 yards of material left, you're going to rack up, if you have to get rid of it that way, you're going to have to spend $1,200 in handling fees moving the container around. That's where a lot of the money's made, is in the moving of the containers. There's some money made with dumping the trash off, the per ton fee. RAD gets a percentage of that, but they're making money moving containers around. So the commissioners seem interested in what I was saying with that, and hopefully that detail can be worked out. We can get bigger containers or more containers, or I think it should be written in the contract. If RAD can't provide the service as the sole source provider, then I'm allowed to go somewhere else, or they have to offer some kind of, they have to eat the cost of moving the other containers around. And who knows? I'm just one person. I'm not in construction 24/7. I'd be curious to hear what some other contractors had to say about this and what their experience has been with dumpsters. And who knows? Maybe they don't care. They're just passing along to the customer. Ann Callison, another frequent guest at Open Mic in recent times. I'm not sure. I assume she lives here. There's a Denver, Colorado address associated with the public record, so I'm not sure what that's all about. Maybe it splits their time between the two places. Just as a tech note here, if you're listening to the county commissioners meeting on their live stream, it's through a service called eScribe, I believe. We'll call that platform A. And then if you're also watching and you want to talk to the commissioners during open mic or a public hearing via Zoom, Zoom is a separate platform. And because of technology reasons I can't explain, the two are not synced with each other. It's kind of like if you call into a terrestrial radio station, they tell you, turn the radio down in the back because there's a tape delay. Same situation here. So if you want to speak at the county commissioners meeting, just stick with Zoom, the official Zoom app, or Zoom through a web browser so that everything is cohesive. She got on the open mic and was berating the commissioners and who's running the meeting about the audio and video not being synced up. And if I heard her correctly, she demanded that the meeting be stopped and started over so that the things are synced up. But, also in that same vein, the county does not have to offer Zoom telework. It's great that they do. It makes it convenient if you're out of town or something you want to chime in on, or if, say, you're an engineer and you're based in Salt Lake City, you don't have to drive to Teton County. I think it's a great asset, but my understanding is they don't have to do that. And if you're going to speak, just stick with the Zoom app and don't follow along also with the eScribe version. She made a comment, and this one is becoming a top 3 pet peeve of mine. People are throwing around the terminology, the health, safety, and welfare of the community. That's the Board of County Commissioners' mission statement, is to worry about the health, safety, and welfare. Yeah, fair enough. Well, here's the problem. Both sides can play it however they want, depending what day of the week it is and what the agenda. I could take the same issue and play antagonist or protagonist or, devil's advocate on either side of the coin with that little catchphrase. So I think the health, safety, and welfare line is sort of losing its its good intentions, I think, are being diminished because it just gets thrown around now. It's almost like the modern equivalent of calling someone a racist. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, you called someone a racist. That meant something. Now it's just, I'll call you a racist, or in this case, it's the health, safety, and welfare of the community. There was some mention from her about, how Grand Targhee Ski Resort used to be locals only. I don't know what to say about that. Grand Targhee's been around for 50 years. We live in a resort community. We're not going back to Sleepy Hollow. The wheels are in motion already. There's no way to sort of wind back the hands of time and undo what has been done. Especially, to the people that are upset about Grand Targhee's expansion proposals. Stop buying lift tickets, I guess. Stop going up there and eating your food and beverage. Stop buying items at the merch store. That's, as far as I know, that's Targhee's funding mechanism is lift tickets, and every time a credit card is swiped at their resort. So you can't have it both ways. You're feeding the machine. We all are. And if you don't like it, maybe a backcountry touring setup is more your speed. Let's see here. Ida Hansen spoke. She drove home the point that, even if you have a wildlife overlay on your property, it's still private property at the end of the day. She had, if I remember correctly, listened into a public meeting elsewhere in the Intermountain West, and someone was making the point, and you hear the same stuff here, where people talk about, wildlife this, wildlife that. And, whoever was presiding over this particular meeting she was listening to correctly pointed out that, yeah, the wildlife are here, but, it's still private property at the end of the day. And I don't know all the particulars of it, but the wildlife map is also losing its momentum here in Teton County. It's like one of the Hail Mary go-to items in the playbook is if all else fails and you can't stop a project, just start hollering about, big game migration corridors or songbird overlays or riparian way, or, whatever you want. That's becoming another tactic. She also expressed frustration related to the building department review timelines. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Agenda item number 6 is the public works update. Daryl pointed out that Galen's concern about the road. The photos she presented were of the immediate construction area. They weren't photos in front of where she lives. So these photos were kind of taken down the road, and just kind of get the feeling that they're tired of hearing about it. They know that the road's bad up there, and there was I got the feeling that maybe they were like, this is a little disingenuous coming up here and complaining about the roads in front of your house, and then the photos you have are actually not in front of your house. They're down the road a third of a mile. And again, construction is just part of polite society. Sometimes you got to go through it, around it, detours, etc. I don't know what the solution is, but you got to kind of grin and bear it. And I don't think anyone's being asked to grin and bear a construction site for 15 years. This is a building season or two. Daryl also added that he had nothing but positive interactions with this particular contractor that's doing the Northern Lights subdivision project, and it sounds like they were going to reach out to him, and which again, I feel like Galen should have just asked them, and who knows, maybe she has and wasn't satisfied with the answer, but hopefully maybe we can start taking betting odds on whether or not it'll be a regular open mic thing, or maybe we can pick what the over under is for the year for road complaints. Item 6.5 was the Milk Creek Road vacation. If you're not familiar, this is in the when you're facing the big holes. This is kind of in the upper right hand corner, sort of the northwestern part of the county. There's you go out 4,000 and then you kind of meander around on the new road that the developer built out there. I don't know what they're actually developing. It's very hush-hush at the moment. It's just one giant parcel up there, over 3,000 acres, I believe. But they got rid of the old Kay's Dairy Farm road that went, straight up the hill at a 45-degree pitch. And they put this beautiful road in that's properly graded. And this Milk Creek Road, I'm guessing, will eventually cut through what's going to be someone's front yard. And so the developer built this beautiful stretch of road out there. I think it's 9 miles long, give or take. And it's a county road, so maybe take a drive up there one day and check it out. Beautiful views of the whole county, and there's a section that they want to vacate, and I think they're going to make it happen. The county had asked in exchange that they will vacate this road, but you have to build the next 2 miles that goes all the way out to the highway, out to 33, headed north. Right now, it's like a dirt 2 track. And the developer pushed back on that, said, it's $1 million a mile to build road, and like no one's using that road. So I think at some point that'll get done. I think they were kind of headed down the road of, developing some kind of proportional share language that if that neighborhood is built out, they'll chip in if the county does improve that last stretch of road. When you're driving out towards Rexburg, this would be on your left-hand side where that road enters Highway 33. There's that old like city bus and some grain bins or silos out there to the south of the highway. That's the road that's in question that they wanted the developer to fix. So anyway, interesting just to follow along. There, there's access to the national forest up there, and pretty cool stretch of road. Let's see here. There was a internet outage during the meeting, so if you're watching the recording from the meeting, it cuts out for I think almost 14 minutes, and I don't know. I wasn't in the room, so I don't know how far it was into that internet outage before they realized that there was an internet outage, but so be it. Just another, when you go back and listen to the recordings, you notice a lot of things, especially sometimes I'll listen 2 or 3 times to particular things because they're so nuanced and detailed. And, some of these land use things, every little detail matters. It's very hard to just sort of broad brush the intricacies of these things. I mean, they're quasi judicial. This is the kangaroo court for these people that have these applications before the commissioners. But just be mindful if you are listening on Zoom at home to make sure your microphone is off. And usually, whoever's running the meeting on the county side, they will mute everyone, but someone's account wasn't muted and there was a dog barking in the background. It's very distracting to hear a dog barking in the background during a meeting. So, my concern is if there's so much housekeeping that has to be done with Zoom that at some point, they've talked about this in the past, like just not having Zoom, and that would be detrimental to everyone. Let's see here. Also, in that same vein with the Zoom stuff, I think if you have something that's really important, a land use that's going to directly impact you, something you want to speak about, I would say make every effort you can to be present in the room and speak in person. It just is never as effective, it seems, when people speak over Zoom. Um, and also, maybe do a test recording if you have to, and just play back your audio and make sure your audio is good. Recently, there's been people. It sounds like the microphone is almost in their mouth and they're screaming at the computer, and it comes through very distorted and broken up. And you can tell the commissioners are doing the best to try and listen to what you're saying, but if it's really that important to you, you got to take the time off or do whatever you have to be in a room so that you can, land your punches more effectively, if you will. This is an interesting one. So item 6.3 on the agenda was the courthouse HVAC repairs. That's the heating and air conditioning system. So apparently, when the great cough broke out, I remember saying to one of my good friends, I said, there's going to be a lot of unintended consequences to this whole, COVID fiasco. And here was another one that came to light. So apparently, there's been some issues with the county heating and air conditioning system, the ventilation system in the courthouse building. And as it turns out, if I understood this correctly, during COVID, an HVAC contractor went in there and bypass some of the controls in the HVAC system so that the system ran continuously. If you remember, the big thing was we need the HVAC systems to be, running at full capacity to circulate the air and filter out viruses and blah, 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 blah. Well, they did that. They rigged the system up and it was running 24/7. What they also did, perhaps unintentionally, they rigged up the system in a way that the resistive heating elements that are in the ductwork were also running 24/7, including in the summer. So the air was being heated, and then we were paying to cool the air that was also being heated in the same ducting system. So Daryl said that the heating bill has been upwards of $4,000 a month, or the HVAC bill, and they expect that to drop by half or maybe more. So, my quick math is over 5 years. We're somewhere between $125 and $150,000 in wasted energy, and just to drill down on this a little bit more. So, if you pull a building permit in the county, I believe the county does all their mechanical inspections or HVAC inspections in house, and then they do the building inspection portion. So every one of us knows someone that's pulled a building permit and probably knows someone that's also failed a building inspection, whether the window wasn't the right kind of glass, the railing had the wrong spacing, the screw pattern on the sheetrock was wrong, and they fail you. So then I'm hearing this story about how we're wasting money and the HVAC system is messed up, and now we have to have another contractor come in and fix it. And I just wondered, who's inspecting the work in the county courthouse building? Are they pulling permits to do the work? Are the county inspectors or a third party doing any kind of inspection, or is it just because it's a government building, it's a free for all, and you can do whatever you want? It's kind of like the rules for thee and not for me kind of situation. So just keep that in mind if you're if you ever pull a building permit. The county apparently is not inspecting their own work and wasting our money, in fact, because of the shoddy work that's being done. All right. Let's see here. Just flipping through the notes here. Loaded. All right, item 7.2. This isn't in the planning and zoning section. This was the public hearing for the MD Spud LLC Land Development Code Amendment request. So, the entity that's took over the Spud Drive-In movie theater is looking for a change to the Land Development Code, or the LDC, or county code as it's sometimes referred to. This seems to be a rare display of seemingly overwhelming support during the public comment period. No one spoke against it. No one spoke neutral. Representative from Vard spoke in favor of it. Perhaps that's a goodwill gesture from Vard, that they can say that they actually were in favor of something. Usually they're against everything. So what they're trying to do is add a drive-in theater use to the use table in the land development code. If you're not familiar with that, if there's 6 or 7 different zoning categories for the county, and then there's a chart that goes along with that. And if you look at the top of the chart, it has the zoning type, and then on the left-hand side, it has 100 common uses for land in the United States. And then you go across the chart, and it'll kind of tell you whether it's a special use permit required, limited use, not allowed at all, or permitted perhaps right out of the gate. So there's no category for a drive-in movie theater. So despite all the expertise we had, and even though the Spud Drive-In was very much a thing when the land use code was rewritten, I guess no one thought to add that into the land use code, and now it's created a problem because I surmise that since the wind destruction a few years ago, now they're going to have to do more than 50% renovations to bring the place up to speed. And oftentimes in building construction, I don't know all the intricacies here, but most jurisdictions, if you do more than like a 50% modification to a building, sometimes that'll trigger other things. Like maybe you have to put a sprinkler system in, or you have to update the fire alarm system, or change your egress plan. So either way, hopefully the Spud Drive-In is on the road to being rebuilt. Item 7.3 was also a amendment request to the land use code. This was for THH LLC, Thomas Hedges. This is related to the Moose Creek Ranch down there in Victor, or south of Victor. So this amendment is regarding dude ranches, right? So I have their application here. So what they're looking for in their proposed revisions, they want to increase the number of guests allowed from 0.5 guests per acre to 3 rooms or units per acre, with a cap of 60 total rooms or units. So they want to increase the density of the occupants, or increase the occupancy limit is another way to say it. They want to allow more variety of structures to function as guest rooms, such as yurts, tiny homes, tents, and teepees. They want to remove numerical restrictions for on-site events, so perhaps weddings, or conferences, or maybe music events. Allowing service of food and beverage to the public in addition to on-site guests. Kind of thought they were doing that. And then the item number 5 was adding the guest dude ranch use as a limited use in the FH20 zone. I believe that is FH as in foothills. So let's see my notes here on this one. Nikki Richards, a representative from Vard. Vard is the Valley Advocates for Responsible Development. She spoke against this. Former Board of County Commissioner member Cynthia Regal spoke against this. She thinks that they want to eventually make the leap from a dude ranch to a full-on resort-style development. So I guess that language in their ask was concerning to her. Let's see. Moose Creek Ranch is the entity, again, that's pushing for this, even though it's under this LLC name. It's Moose Creek Ranch. And I think they have the best pizza in Teton Valley, by the way. So the Planning and Zoning Board had denied this request 5-2. Ann Callison also commented on this one. she said that this was hidden in the agenda. I'm not sure what she meant by that. Perhaps she was referring to um, the way the agenda is laid out. It has the owner of the property, so to me that looks like it's the correct owner, THH Thomas Hedges. Um, I guess she wanted to know what their doing business name was also, but typically the agendas don't say that. Now, the agenda is like 3 pages long, the cover sheet, but the whole agenda packet might be 1,000 pages long. So you can go look in there and sort of dig in and see what the property is in question. But so I don't, if that's what she meant, I don't agree that it was hidden. Um, Again, just make sure you're not, speaking, speak normally and at a reasonable distance from the microphone on your laptop. The microphone and audio system on a laptop is like a $7 setup. It's not professional level audio equipment. Typically, things have improved, but either way, you can't scream into the thing. It sounds horrible on the other end, and your message is lost in all the cracking of the speakers in the commissioner's room. Um, let's see. They ended up tabling this amendment request, and another public hearing will be scheduled after a new proposal submitted. It was getting too messy with, the commissioners are kind of asking them to edit things on the fly, and I think ultimately they're going to get a favorable decision. That's how negotiation goes, right? They asked for 5 things. There were some numerical values in their asks. I think, maybe they'll cut it in half or whatever agreement they come to. The commissioners basically said, come back with a more palpable offer to us. That was a 2-to-1 vote um, for them to come back and do this over again. All right, let's see. Then we had item 7.4. This was the Sweetwater Ranch subdivision substantial plat amendment reconsideration. And here we go again, right out of the gate, the health, safety, and welfare. Just remember, this cuts both ways. So I think this argument of using the health, safety, and welfare, Commissioner Mike Whitfield used to use this a lot. But again, I think both sides use it when it's convenient for them. So Howie Garber was the applicant for the reconsideration. So he was asked to come forward and explain what his legal standing position was and why he felt that he was able to apply for this reconsideration. Um, he then asked if some people who had time constraints could come and speak first, and it's just like, hold on a minute. If this is so important to you to try and get this reconsideration request across the finish line and overturned ultimately, like you have to carve out the time to do this. And sometimes, the county commissioner meetings, they'll put times on the agenda. It's a it's a best guess because some of these things they budget 20 minutes and it takes an hour and 20 minutes and then it pushes everything else back. And they I think the commissioners would be within our rights to continue half the agenda, but eventually you got to just dig in and get the work done. Otherwise, we would be backed up an additional 6 months on things. Um, I don't know if Mr. Garber quite understood all the intricacies of what it means to have legal standing in a case, but he thought that because he had prior involvement, he had legal standing. Idaho case law says that you have to have a bona fide interest, such as being within 300 feet of the subject parcel, to have legal standing. Um, this is we thank God we have standing rules in this country because I'm sitting here in Idaho. I shouldn't be allowed to just sue someone in Florida because they're doing something I don't like because a judge rightfully would say like, well, what do you care? It's not in your backyard. So you have to just keep this standing question in mind. And this has come up half a dozen times in the last year with other reconsideration requests where people are offended by a particular project, but like they don't have any skin in the game or standing. Um, he talked, I didn't quite understand how this tied into the reconsideration request, but he talked about a voluntary noise reduction program that the city of Driggs has, but the FAA can't enforce it. And I don't know how that tied into anything. Um, he had just going back to the beginning of that, he had asked if other people could come and speak. Like there's a sequence of events that happens in these public meetings. You can't offer closing arguments before you have opening statements. So a reconsideration hearing is not just another opportunity for people to come and bitch. And there's been a lot of these reconsiderations lately. A reconsideration, you have to be able to demonstrate that there was either information that was misrepresented or the commissioner somehow erred in their decision making process, or you kind of have to use information that was already part of the original public hearing. It's not an opportunity to go back in and like kind of pull a double jeopardy thing and uh, come up with some new novel idea of why a project should be denied. Um, just as a side note, the airport was founded in 1949. So pretty much everyone that's living in Teton Valley um, has could turn around and say they have standing, and that was the argument that they ultimately tried making was that, well, I see airplanes flying over my house, therefore I have legal standing to stand in the way of the Sweetwater True Love subdivision plat amendment, and the commissioners said, fine, listen, we'll go through this whole process, but we're not going to say right now whether you have standing or not. We're going to go back and talk to the legal experts on this, and at least we'll have given you an opportunity to hear what your issues are. Ultimately, I think they're going to get knocked on this one because a lot of the stuff they brought up should have been brought up during the public hearing that was 2 months ago. And even before that, there's been a lot of meetings that have led up to where we are regarding this particular land use application. So I think they're going to end up getting denied. This kind of just drives home the point of if you see something come up or you got to pay attention to what's going on, right? If you start seeing little signs with, fine print on them going up on a piece of property, it would behoove you to pull over and see what it says, or look in the newspaper, or look on the county webpage, or make a phone call and participate in the correct order of events. The people that are applying for land use or putting a land use application in, if it's going to require a public hearing, there's certain things they have to adhere to in timelines. They have to publicly notice it. People have to get letters from the adjoining property. So they're playing by the rules. So if the public wants to oppose something, you have to pay attention to it as it's happening in real time. You don't get to show up a year and a day later and raise objections and try and shut these things down. I mean, I guess you could try, but so again, they're going to try and make the argument, even though none of the people that were there live within 300 feet of the airport. They're going to try and say that because they can see the airport or planes fly over their house, that they have legal standing on this. The main gripes were noise. There's no airport tower. I don't even know why they would bring that up. Leaded plane fuel. They're claiming that Jackson's using our airport because fuel's less expensive. So I did a little digging on this. So right now, fuel's about $10 a gallon in Driggs, and it's about $11 a gallon in Jackson. If you're just buying it on the open market, that's without getting into like contractual agreements to say someone like Delta might have where they're buying fuel in bulk at a better rate. So it's $1 cheaper in Driggs. An average jet burns anywhere between 50 and 200 gallons of fuel just on takeoff. So I don't know if the argument's really valid that people are flying to Driggs to fuel up. I mean, once upon a time, I lived on a border of two states, and the one state had gas that was always 50 cents a gallon cheaper. So people would drive over there, or they would get fuel coming and going from work if they went through that state. I can't imagine that, if you own a jet, that you care about saving $1 per gallon on fuel. And, if you have a little Cessna or something, like chances are you're not landing in Jackson anyway with that kind of plane. You can, but then again, you're not going to pick up again and fly over to Driggs with your 100-gallon fuel tank. You burn half. It just the math don't math on this. So I think that argument's a weak argument. Let's see here. Just continuing this whole thing here, the attorneys representing the Sweetwater True Love Project brought up, correctly so, you're not allowed to bring up new issues after the fact. This whole tower to airport thing, I've heard this mentioned a couple times that, well, we don't have a tower at the airport here. So I asked around to some friends of mine that are very active in the aviation community, and they assured me that Driggs is far from needing a tower due to the amount of flights or the perceived congestion. I hate to break it to the airport haters, but this airport is far from being at max capacity. There's some airports I was told where at any given time there could be 10 airplanes in the pattern to land or take off, and there's no tower there. The pilots communicate with modern electronics or radios, or they might be using air traffic control that's further removed. But this whole argument about, well, there's no tower here, so we can't possibly have 44 new hangar homes here, as if they're all taking off in this like elephant march kind of fashion. It's just more fear mongering, and I don't know what to tell these people. If you start looking at the public records at the developments that are all around the airport was there before 99.5% of all the homes that are in that surrounding area. So when this goes back to like, if you don't like the roads, be careful what you build. If you don't like airports and airplane noise and helicopters coming and going, I would suggest you don't live near an airport. There are communities in the country where there's no airport around, but they're in the middle of central Wyoming, or it's hard to find an airport that doesn't have some kind of traffic, or an area that doesn't have a little airport with some kind of coming and going, even if it's little single engine airplanes. So choose wisely when you're putting roots down somewhere. Again, you're not allowed to just sit on the sidelines, then read about something in the paper or see something on social media and slap together this Hail Mary reconsideration request to overturn the county commissioner decision. I personally think that they should establish whether the people have standing or not before they even turn the floor over to them. Like, this should be done ahead of time, like a sort of like a pre-trial conference, right? You think that you have grounds for a reconsideration request to be heard? Fine. Let's put it in. We'll have the legal team review it, and they can weigh in and say, yes, you do have standing, or no, you don't have standing. And then if they say no, there's probably a mechanism where you could sue and escalate it in the court system. But I wish something would be done with that, because it's being abused, in my opinion. They're kind of turning this whole process into like, they want a second, third, fourth, fifth bite of the apple. And then when the whole apple's gone, they want to get another apple and start eating that. Or another one that came to mind is like, you ask mom, she says no. What do? You go to dad. It's like, it doesn't work that way. And for good reason. You would just drag people's property use rights into the gutter in perpetuity. Thankfully, that's not the society we live on. Although increasingly, it looks like that is how we live. When I'm hearing these people complain about the aviation fuel, the leaded fuel, and I wonder if they understand what the F in FAA stands for. I think it stands for federal. Maybe someone could fact check me on it. So really, they should. I think their fight on this one, if they're going to go down the rabbit hole, if we have to stop the Sweetwater subdivision from being built because of the leaded airplane fuel, like, they should be banging the pots and pans in D.C. And my understanding is that there's, policies and procedures that are coming online or in place to sort of phase out the leaded airplane fuel. And I mean, it's been being phased out every day. There's fewer and fewer airplanes that are using this type of fuel, or people are switching. Upgrading the plane in a way so that it can burn regular, 91 octane fuel that you put in a regular automobile. So eventually this problem's just going to kind of die on the vine and go away, and it will further diminish the argument about shutting down the airport. They'll have to pick a new boogeyman at that point. Just another housekeeping thing. You're not allowed to just shout from the back of the room. One, for the people that are listening online, it makes it very hard to hear you because you're not speaking into a microphone, and it kind of shortchange the conversation. And it's just out of order. You're not allowed to do that, right? This isn't the high school cafeteria. So you can't yell from the back of the room. It just mucks things up. Another comment here, it's called public comment period, not public questioning. I guess you could put out rhetorical questions, but there's no expectation of a back and forth between members of the public that are not an directly involved party, or your name's not on the paperwork. You're not allowed to go up there and question the commissioners or question the attorneys that are on Zoom representing the other side of this saga. So just know you can't yell from the room, and this isn't a back and forth. Um, this is another favorite gentleman by the name of Bob Whipple, if I got the name right. He gets up there, and they it's a little confusing because this is a reconsideration. So they ask, "Are you in favor of this reconsideration being heard? Um, are you in favor of the original decision?" He gets up and they said, listen, if you're speaking right now, this means you're in favor of the original decision and the subdivision being built. So he gets up there, and I'm a surgeon. I've 800 college degrees. I worked on animals and cats and dogs and horses and on and on and on. And I'm exaggerating here a bit, but this whole thing where people get up there and give their whole life resume, if I was the commissioners, my brain immediately shuts off because now you're just trying to one up everyone, let everyone know how great you are. And it's, very rarely when these people lay out their entire life story and resume, I think it just makes you sound like an ass, to be honest. And I feel like it diminishes what your point is. You're there as a member of the public. You're not an expert witness at the O.J. Simpson trial, talking about how gloves fit or whatever. You're just a person that lives in the neighborhood and get up there and speak and say your piece. I think the commissioners listen to everyone equally. Personally, I think when you get up there and start grandstanding with how smart you are and what you know better than everyone else, because that's how it comes across, I think their eyes just kind of glaze over. Um, so he spoke against this reconsideration in favor of the original decision. In other words, turns out it was the opposite point of view he had, and he got up there and rambled on about leaded plane fuel and the children are licking the playground equipment and there's leaded dust in the classrooms and on and on and on. Most of the public comments related to this reconsideration, everything's about leaded plane fuel. I don't know where these people were when the original public hearing took place. I think they might have actually had a shot at slowing or stopping or modifying this thing if they would have made these arguments, but they missed the opportunity. So again, when the county or the cities are putting those little stakes, a wood stake with the sign on it with all the fine print, get out of your car and go read what it is, especially if it's in your neighborhood. If you're driving by it every day, coming and going, it probably is going to have some impact on your life. So check out what the public hearings are all about. Let's see here. I already spoke about this, but it happened again at this meeting. If you're going to go up to the commissioners during the meeting, I think it's respectful and it's proper if you say, "Hey, you mind if I come up and show this stuff to you?" These people waltz up there like they're. I think they forget maybe like these are our elected officials. Um, like conduct yourself accordingly. Just another, sort of public speaking thing. If you're going to take the time to go and speak at one of these meetings, I would consider having a script. Not everyone can weave a story like Trump come. Trump can go on a side tangent off the teleprompter script for 5 minutes and then somehow come right back. And in the meantime, you went on an adventure around the world. Not everyone can do that. And you start repeating yourself and kind of getting tripped up on your own words. And if the commissioners see that there's 50 people in the room, they'll let them all speak, but they're going to say, listen, we're going to cap you at 3 minutes. And the commissioners are a little bit more lenient. Planning and zoning board, man, they have a shock collar that comes and zaps you if you go a second over and keep talking. So if you only have 3 minutes to go and make your point, I think it would behoove you to sit down and flesh out some talking points and maybe get to, these people seem to know each other, right? So maybe have a little neighborhood powwow ahead of time and sit down and say, all right, what are you going to talk about? What are you going to talk about? Because some people, it's like, well, you stole my topic. Now I don't know what I want to say. And then they get up there and just kind of, yammer on about whatever. And it becomes, I think you lose your effectiveness in the argument. It's not because you don't have other things to talk about. It's just you didn't plan properly. Another point on this same thing here, you got to know your audience. If you want to get up there and just drone on about scientific matters, you have to understand that you're talking to a contractor, Mr. Powers, a barbecue chef, a really good one, Mr. James, and Brad's a guy that sells light fixtures for a living. So you have to know who you're talking to. You get up there and start talking all kinds of crazy charts and graphs and this and that in this, quick 3 minute hit. And these guys are going, my stomach's grumbling. I haven't eaten lunch yet. Let's get this thing going. Like, I would encourage you to just look at what you're writing. I mean, now you can take what you have typed up that you're going to say, send it through ChatGPT or a similar AI platform and say, hey, I need you to make this topic or this speech that I have written up suitable for this audience. And you can even tell, AI now is, the more data you give it, you could say, I got a contractor, a guy that runs his own catering business, and a guy that's in the retail sales world. I need to convey this message to them. Oh, no problem. It'll spit out a whole thing for you, and you can get up there and sound and communicate effectively, right? Let's see here. Again, I have this written down on my notes here a couple times. Is your goal to let everyone in the room know how smart you are, or is it to make a persuasive argument? You think back to like elementary school. They used to make you write, a persuasive essay, and I think sometimes that art form has become lost, and people forget who their audience is, and is this about you, or is this about trying to convey a message and um, you know, get a decision in your favor. Let's see here. This one has come up a couple times with the Sweetwater deal. Nikki Richards from Vard, she keeps bringing up. There's a lot of concern about the fire pond and the waterfowl, ducks and geese interacting with airplanes in a detrimental way. I don't know if the applicant or the True Love folk, Sweetwater True Love, have said we're only doing a fire pond. I mean, to me, this seems like okay. If the waterfowl is a concern, imagine if you will, if there was only a way we could contain water in something other than a fire pond, maybe like a tank, right? Maybe we could put a tank in with a lid. And we keep the ducks out, and we can store fire water. So I'm not sure why that one hasn't been cleaned up. I mean, I don't know how big the most fire ponds I see are pretty small. You're not putting 100 ducks on there, right? Like duck might stop, get a drink of water, and leave. Like honestly, I don't know that it's as big of a deal as they're making it out to be. I mean, look at where like San Francisco, where the New York City airports, or every military base, Navy base is on the water, and they got planes coming and going. I mean, I get it. I just don't know that there's going to be herds of ducks here. I don't know if that's a strong enough argument to shut this project down. But oftentimes these things become, throw as much shit at the wall as you can, and hopefully something sticks. Let's see here. Someone, I don't remember who it was, expressed concern that this project only benefits the applicant. Really? Well, most projects go that way, right? Like, there's some things that have community benefit. Like, you're building a grocery store. Okay, we all got to shop and go to the grocery store. But I bet most of the projects, if you looked at them objectively and said, does this benefit the entire community, or does it benefit the people that are going to use the property? I mean, most of our development here in Teton Valley is residential development. Like, I didn't build my house for the enjoyment of the rest of the community. I built it for my family. I think that's why most people like, right, when you build a house, it's not an event center. So I didn't. Again, sometimes I wonder if they, don't sort of look at their comments through the opposing viewpoint. This is something that I have found to be very beneficial when these land use deals come up and they're going back and forth in these public hearings. And, it's pretty quick now. The people give their name, especially if you're watching a recording, you can hit pause. And I'm always curious, and I look, where do the people live, and what is their complaint? And I try and make my own little calculus in my head of, is that a valid gripe, or is this just someone that's a professional complainer? Um, so you can use the county GIS system. I believe that's Geographic Information Systems or Services. It's a mapping software, and you can go to the Teton County, Idaho government webpage, and there's a link on there for the GIS department. GIS department here does a great job. There's a ton of mapping data with overlays for everything from where the fire hydrants are to the bear conflict zone, zoning, tax districts. And the parcel one probably gets used the most, right? The parcel and tax address. So someone gives their name, hey, I'm Joe Smith, and you catch part of their address, you can go in and go, oh, okay, I see where they live. And you can also pull up to see what their tax address is. And sometimes, I kind of, keeping score, and I go, well, this is like your third house, and it's a rental here. I don't want to hear from you as much. Uh, not that they don't have any skin in the game, but depending what the gripe is, I think that should factor in. So get you some mapping software. I like using OnX. OnX is quick and easy to navigate. There's a bunch of other ones out there that you have to pay for them usually. The one with OnX is if you buy like the premium package, you can look up every parcel in all 50 states and see where people live. And sometimes it's helpful when you're reading a news article to try and get an idea of the lay of the land and what they're talking about or the type of neighborhood that it is. So let's see here. Ann Callison again, aviation enthusiast. I've labeled her. I'm kidding about that, of course. Again, she thinks that everyone in Teton County has standing with this one. So this might make for an interesting test case. The county's legal beagles weren't willing to make a real-time decision on whether or not simply having an airplane fly over your house gives you legal standing to stop a subdivision that might be 10 miles from where you live because a plane may have taken off from there. I mean, who knows? There's planes flying around all the time. I don't know where they're all coming from. I thought this was an interesting line of concern. She thinks that people might come and visit. She used the example of Jim and Janie from Oklahoma come here, and they say, "Hey, let's go fly around the Teton Ridge Ranch and check out the billionaires' homes." I don't quite understand this infatuation with Mr. Toll. It seems like the most chatty people or the naysayers about this gentleman have never met him, only know what they heard at the grocery store in the produce aisle. It's this weird obsession. It's like, guys, this gentleman and his various business dealings have given millions of dollars to Teton County. He's keeping the hospital open right now. He paid for the Housing Authority Executive Director position for the last few years. He sponsored 3 sheriff's deputies through the Sheriff's Foundation. He's got a commitment with the fire department if they ever build. He's given money to the fairgrounds and the rodeo grounds. I don't understand the constant attacks or this weird obsession. Like, I don't know how you get up and say, I want to stop this fly-in, fly-out subdivision in Driggs that's been in the works for a very long time because Jim and Janie from Oklahoma might come here and fly over Thomas Toll's house. And what if they do? They're allowed to. There's no fence. I guess in the FAA world, there's a way to get like temporary flight restrictions put in, but usually that's reserved for things like the White House or wherever the president is or military installations, or maybe you can't buzz the INL and do a low pass over a reactor building. They might get upset about that. So I have no idea what this whole thing with people going on scenic tours up there. It's like, if someone really wants to see the property, like, there's this whole thing called Google Maps. You can just go in there and look if you're so curious. I don't know what you're going to see from the sky anyway. Like, you got binoculars. Like, it's the weirdest obsession. She thinks that eventually that there's going to be an effort to try and close the Driggs Airport, just like the effort to close or restrict operations at Rocky Mountain Regional Airport in Colorado. I gather that Miss Callison spends a lot of time in Colorado. There's always Colorado references, it seems. I looked into this one a little bit. This Rocky Mountain Regional Airport, it's a busy airport. I think it's similar to Driggs in size and scope of what they do there. I gathered in my reading that there's a lot of flight school training kind of stuff, people learning to become pilots. So when people learn to become a pilot, they might do 10 touch and goes. So there's a lot of like sort of lapping the airport and just flying around. And, when a plane lands, and especially when it takes off, it makes a lot of noise and they're throttled up. And the efforts out there have largely been, again, from what I read, have revolved around trying to restrict hours of operation and how frequent. And it's a heavy lift because the airports, most of them have been around. Like, you don't see many new airports getting built, right? So chances are, wherever the airport in question is, it was probably there long before the town was built. Most of these airports, like look in Pinedale, Wyoming, someday there will probably be homes built all around that airport. And hopefully the people aren't complaining that there's airplane noise and they built a quarter mile from the airport. Most of the airports, like Las Vegas airport's kind of an exception. Most of them are outside of town or off the beaten path. And then, inevitably people go, well, I'm willing to buy less expensive land even if I have to live closer to the airport, or they put factories there or whatever. But, this shutting down Rocky Mountain Regional Airport, I don't think it's happening. There's a lot of noise about it, but, and on the same vein, I don't think we're shutting down the Driggs Airport anytime soon either. Just want to give a tip of the hat to Commissioner Wolf. He stood up for the Board of County Commissioners. He said he takes offense that people accuse him of failing to hear evidence when the reality is these people failed to give them evidence during the original public hearing. So, again, if you want to have your gripes heard, the time to do it is during the public hearing, right? After the jury's rendered their verdict, you can't come back and say, "Oh, hey, by the way," maybe in a murder case or something, but not for these land use things. Once the gavel is struck, that's supposed to be it. If I heard him correctly, I think Commissioner Wolf said he's a pilot. He made reference to another busy airport he's flown in and out of. I don't know if disclosing that was the best tactical move, because if he votes in favor of anything that's airport related or adjacent, I can see people attacking and saying, "Well, you're a pilot, of course you voted to help out the airplane people." It also perpetuates the joke. How do you know someone's a pilot? They'll tell you. Let's see here. These public hearings, they're not no king's protests. It's one step removed from a real courtroom. So you can't yell out, just like in a courtroom. If you started yelling out in a courtroom, a judge would throw your ass out and have the bailiff remove you. So you can't do that. The decision to continue this deliberation for the Sweetwater True Love reconsideration was continued, I believe, to May 11th, and that was a 3-0 unanimous decision. Let's see here. I have this note written down here. Probably around 4 hours and 28 minutes into the recording. Again, I think it's just a matter of courtesy and respect. After these hearings are over, I think it's poor form to go up and sort of try and badger the commissioners again or get another point in. Like, you had your opportunity, right? You got to speak during the public hearing, either in favor of or against or in a neutral position of whatever topic of the day is. So if you have something you want to say, try and get it in during the public hearing. Don't go up there afterwards and try and get another shot across the bow on this. I think that's just in poor taste. Item 9.1, there's some kind of grant that came down from, I think it was the Teton Valley, the Community Foundation of Teton Valley got a grant going with the county here to distribute Stop the Bleed kits, all 3 cities and the county. I assume they're going to be kept in the city and county buildings, maybe in some of the vehicles. I'm not sure where they're going to distribute these, but in these kits, if you've never seen one, there's usually some tourniquets to stop traumatic bleeding from an injury or, God forbid, something worse than that. There's also products called Quick Clot or clotting gauze that have these, I'll call it a chemical that's embedded in the material. And if someone has a gaping wound, I mean, it could be someone, cut themselves on a knife at work, or they were cutting some paper with a utility knife and they sliced their hand open. That can get pretty ugly pretty quick. So, just as I carry this stuff in first aid kits, whether I'm out on my mountain bike or my side-by-side, or I'm going to the gun range or driving in my car. I kind of keep the same standardized first aid kit everywhere I go. And, if you can buy all this quick clotting material and the tourniquets and stuff on Amazon, I would recommend that you buy U.S. made brand name stuff. And the clotting stuff it's pretty expensive product. So, take care of it if you do buy it, but it's a good thing to have could quite literally be life-saving. And then I think tied into that Stop the Bleed program, there was talk about some AEDs. That's the automatic external defibrillator. You shock people if they're having a heart attack or some other kind of cardiac condition. And they do work. Again, it's a good thing. There's always free CPR classes bouncing around the community, or you can get one at the hospital or whatever. So it's a good skill set to have. It's not hard to use an AED. It's better to have some training ahead of time. So if God forbid you do have to use it, it's going to be a terrifying experience unless you've done this before. It's good to even watch a YouTube video on how these things work. They're pretty simple, but they do work. I have a friend, actually, two former coworkers saved the life of another coworker. They were out playing hockey, and it was even crazier. It was an unwitnessed cardiac arrest, and if you don't know, witnessed cardiac arrest, the numbers are not great, even if there's first responders right there and they have all the equipment. But an unwitnessed cardiac arrest, bringing someone back, that's exceptionally rare. And these guys got it done with CPR, and the AED, I think, was the game changer there. So anyway, check that stuff out, the Stop the Bleed stuff and the AED equipment. Item 9.2, the new audiovisual system is coming to the county commissioner meeting room. Guess they're going to be working on that this week. That's wonderful. There's been a lot of complaints over the years with the audio's poor quality, or I think a lot of it honestly is like the housekeeping, meaning like you got to speak into the microphone for the microphone to work. So perhaps they'll get some kind of closed captioning system in. That's been brought up before. A lot of people that spend time working here have worked around machinery and tractors, and by the time you're 65, your hearing is destroyed from being around heavy equipment your whole life, or you're in the building trades or some other loud, noisy environment. The airplanes, that'll be the next thing, right? Is we got to start handing out earplugs to the children because of the airplane noise. So that's cool that they're going to get that going. Item 10.1 was this WC3 proposal. That's the West Coast Code Consultants process and procedures. It sounds like things are trending in a positive direction with the building department as it relates to getting things approved and moved along. That's good. I feel like for a period of time, and maybe it's still there, I wondered if the building department realized like you're actually supposed to be providing a service for the community. You're not there just to torture people. Like Dan Bongino says, and I've quoted this before. He says, it's not the people in Washington, D.C. or Boise you have to worry about. It's the guy that's giving you the shed permit. And I think there's a lot of truth to that, right? Most people are more likely to be impacted by some kind of local land use or building permitting, code enforcement kind of action than some heavy-handed policy from DC. Certainly that can happen, but I think you see my point here. Item 13, this is why it's important to listen all the way to the end of the meetings. The commissioner's report came up. So this is where each of the commissioners, each of these three guys, they each serve as liaisons or as members of other boards, whether it's the East Idaho, I think it's the Solid Waste District, it's the Fair Board, it's the Wildlife Committee, it's the Historic Committee. It's, they have the Board of County Commissioner job, and then they also have like 3 or 4 other things that they go and babysit. And you kind of hear what's developing maybe outside the county or things that'll eventually impact the county. So it's good to listen to this commissioner's report. And also the format for this is kind of just more open discussion. It's not as regimented as the rest of the meeting. This one raised my the hair up on my neck here. Commissioner James wants to dig in on the idea of a county-wide sewer district. And to that, I say, absolutely not. Let's just ponder. And again, he gave just kind of an off-the-cuff, quick 3-minute thing here. And he's talking about trying to get this on the ballot for November. I don't know what the whole plan is. I don't know if the plan is to make a central sewer system or a wastewater treatment plant and have it centered somewhere in the county and tie all 3 incorporated city limit properties into it, or if it's to include the area of impact. But there's a lot of logistics in building out a sewer plant. Yeah, and making it centralized across the county, considering the county from one end to another in the inhabited part, if you will, the most densely populated is 25 miles. Yeah, I get it. We pump oil across Alaska, but that's a heavy mechanical system to build out. Most sewer systems they try and make them gravity fed. It's very hard to dig in our soil here because there's not a lot of clay in it. You can't just dig a trench and have it stay. You have to, it's like we're on this giant sandbox here with loose gravel. And if you've ever dug a trench here deeper than like 3 or 4 feet, the ground doesn't just stick together. So now you're talking about really extensive shoring operations to put sewer lines in. And the water table is so high here in the county, it's almost like the whole system would have to be a pressurized system. You can't dig. You go to big cities, some sewer lines are 20 feet deep, but there's also no standing groundwater to contend with. And yeah, you could pump out the groundwater and do the one-time install, but then what happens when you have a repair to do in the middle of January? I mean, good luck. If you've never tried digging into our soil, even with hydraulic-powered equipment in the winter, it's almost comical. So I hope that this idea dies on the vine. I'll give Commissioner James credit. He has lofty goals, right? Taxing on the short-term rentals, getting state-level legislation approved. Now he's talking about a county-wide sewer district. Just what we needed was another tax. He's running for governor. I mean, it's just I wish there was more focus on the homestead here, if you will, meaning Teton County and all that live and dwell and operate in Teton County. So I hope this idea of a countywide sewer district goes right into the trash can. My understanding is the city of Tetonia has a more recently upgraded, with growth in mind, sewer or wastewater treatment plant. The one in Driggs has its own drama. Now Victor's trying to come from behind. They have their own back and forth pissing contest between the two. I mean, at some point there will be a resolution to all this, but I don't know that building a central wastewater treatment plant and then setting up another bureaucracy with commissioners and just what we needed was another board, right? So let's hope that goes away, but just something good to pay attention to. And Commissioner James said at the meeting he had a full shoulder replacement, so we wish him well. That's a big surgery for anyone, and I don't think he's quite a spring chicken, more spring chicken than others, but still a big surgery, so hopefully he bounces back from that. Well, I think that's all I have for you today. As always, I would encourage you to check out one of these meetings. There's a lot going on here between the sewer plant stuff and that seems to be dominating the news cycle here. And check out, there's some other, I'll call alternative media sources in the county. I'm one of them. There's the Teton Valley Wire. There's also the Signal newspaper that's online only for now. So they've been really cranking out the articles and the data. So check it all out. I think competition's good, even in the media space. And I feel like it's kind of lit a fire under the Teton Valley News a little bit I feel like they've been putting more articles out. So hopefully the trend continues. I say the more information, the better. I think it's good to have an informed public and not just let one media source sort of dominate. So that's all for today. Thank you for listening. Remember, if you want to contact me, shoot me an email at the Isak Clemens Show at gmail.com, or if you'd like to be on the show or have an idea for a show topic, let's hear it. Don't forget to hit that follow button in the Rumble app and turn on the notifications. Stay safe and have a great day.